back to my channel. Today we're going to break down how to do Super Soldier. What is the Super Soldier? Posture's name in Sanskrit is Viparita, Parivrtta, Surya, Yantrasana. It's intense, it's quite a bit, and the Super Soldier pose requires a lot of elements that added together create an extremely beautiful posture to see in the body and extremely intense in the body at the same time. There's a couple of things that you should be aware of when attempting this posture. It requires balance, hip opening, hamstring length, quad strength, shoulder opening. So all those elements added together create the pose itself. This posture, I feel sometimes we go into it without realizing exactly what is it that you have to do in order to achieve stability in the pose. And today we're going to break down a lot of those elements and see poses that can help you grow into the posture itself, to creating the inversion, because your head is below the hips, the quad lengthener, same as the hamstring that is stretching, but at the same time foot pressing towards the ground in order to lift from the hips to create the pose. All those things we will review as we go through, again, postures that can help us get closer to the Super Soldier. Where did this pose come from? Honestly, I have no idea. I do not believe it's a traditional posture. If it is, please someone comment below and let me know if it is so I can educate myself a little bit more in it. As I believe it is a hybrid of a couple of poses. You can take as a basis the standing split or the actual split Hanumanasana on the ground, and those postures, as you add into them like a mermaid stretch with a bind, quad stretching behind you and taking your hand to grab the foot, can be a hybrid for this posture that now you do standing in one foot. So without further ado, let's get started. All right, guys. So first I've divided this video into parts. We're gonna review first the lower body. First posture we're going to review is Pashimotanasana. I'm going to be watching the same thing as you are, and you start with your legs straight. I recommend you rolling the thighs in, and when you start in this posture, bending the knees and expanding the abdomen first will be a good idea. So you lengthen from the sacrum to the back edge of the skull. That is a cue that I throw in a lot. It's hyper important to stretch the muscles that surround the spine. See how little by little I'm stretching my legs, but still I'm holding the back of my knees. You don't really have to grab the feet. If you notice that your spine is rounding, grabbing the back of the knees will always be ideal. I'm moving forward to grabbing my big toes. So it's a little bit more traditional approach. If you feel already warmer on your hamstrings, you can definitely take that option. I accommodate myself. I breathe in and out in order to get more extension of my front side so my spine can follow. Now I'm going to go a little bit more in and grab my wrist. So this is another variation. If you find a little bit more space from the front side to expand even more and stretch the mid upper back, then take this variation where you grab the wrists. Moving forward into a forward fold. So here I am grabbing my hips. I'm bending my knees. Same principle as when you do the straight-legged forward fold, is little by little you start finding extension from the hamstrings, but also notice how my hips are still stacking over my heels rather than sending my body weight back, because then that loses the stretch of the hamstrings. Now, I did it a little bit there. This is very humbling. I did it a little bit there when I picked myself up, but ideally, even when you lift yourself up, you keep the center line. Notice here, I go down. I have my legs a little bit straighter. I take that halfway lift. And then when I fold, I make sure that, again, hips are over the heels. You're spreading from the big toe, pinky toe center of the heel in order to feel stable in the posture when you grab the big toes from in between the second toe. You spread the shoulders, you look up, and your second option is Parivrtta, which is with the hands underneath the soles of the feet. Make sure that the middle toe is always facing forward towards the wrist. My elbows are a little bit more forward for my liking. Try to send them a little bit farther out. And then from there, same principle, is just a little bit more of a deeper stretch. Then you pick yourself up. Then we're moving forward into our pyramid posture. So making sure that when you are stepping forward, the back foot and the heel is down completely. You want to have, in this case, the left hip meeting the right. Someone tends to go tilted and shift back. So ultimately having that sacrum part flat in order to be able to be that your pinning point. So when you extend the abdomen over the thigh, you get a really good stretch on the hamstring of the front leg. You make sure that you repeat on the other side. This posture is not symmetric, so I'm just going to quickly make sure that I do here, and then we keep it moving forward. Then we move into our half splits. So the half splits, when you step the first leg that you're going to try it on forward, making sure that whatever leg is behind, its hip is stacked over the knee. If you go too far back, you lose a little bit of the stretch of the hamstring on the leg, which is the aim of this posture. Noticing how the quad is being supportive and not really being stretched, and that's why the half split is a little bit simpler and more, it's a little bit less aggressive. It's a little bit more understanding of how the front leg needs more of a stretch rather than adding the quad. Now notice how I magically appear with blocks. And so this is another variation to make sure that you're not rounding the spine. So you ultimately do want to get a really good stretch on the hamstring of the front leg, but also you make sure that you keep the integrity of your spine. So again, it's a lot of core strength to make sure that the muscles that support the vertebrae are long and feel, again, that support of the front side to keep you in the position. Then again, this posture is not symmetric. You come into a lunge, you can down dog, and repeat on the other side. Now I'm quickly going to demo exactly what not to do when coming into a split. If what you're looking for is a hamstring stretch, then going like this, sitting on your heel, won't really do much. It's a different posture, definitely for something else. But in this case, you want your half split to be hip over the knee, and then extending whichever leg you want to stretch forward. Moving into happy baby. See, this is one position that I truly love. It's a really good hip opener. Sometimes we give it for granted. When you're coming into it, I suggest starting grabbing the back of the knees and potentially moving into the ankles if you want to get a little bit more weight. And then maybe you can grab the outer edges of the feet. Now, make sure that when you go for the outer edges of the feet, the sacrum does not lift. You can notice if that happens, see there, and you lose a lot of the stretch because you want to get the quads down. So I snuggle myself. This kind of movement from side to side really helps. I call it the Charmin bear dance. It's really good, and then you can settle and press a little bit more from hands to feet in order to give you the groin opener. Moving into half frog, this posture is also called frog. Bikasana is another word for frog. When you're moving into it, the heel, you can start with it pressing towards the butt and then moving it outside, and then down, kind of like a shift gear is how I say it. And you can also start flipping the fingers in order to include a little bit more of the chest there, because definitely chest openers will come in handy for the position. Again, make sure that you repeat on the other side as well. Same principle. Try to keep the thighs somewhat close to one another. If you spread them too far apart, you lose a lot of the stretch. When moving into the full frog, making sure, and I'm going to pause it right there, that the hip bones do not lift away from the ground. If there's like a tunnel in between the hips and the ground, you're losing the stretch and you're just overarching the back. So if you notice that doing full Bikasana or the full posture itself is a little bit too much, just give yourself grace and do one first and then the other. Go back to half. When you start flipping the grip, it will give you another sense of chest opening and already warming up into the shoulders. We're going to get into that later when we see the upper body, but for now, notice again how much of a quad stretch you can get when you start flipping the hands, so be mindful of that. Moving into squat pose, this posture is one of my ultimate favorites. It opens a lot of the hip groin. While you're moving into the posture, you ideally want to have the middle toe facing forward. I'm going to pause it in a moment. You're going to see that I'm going to turn to face you, and you're going to see what I mean. When you start going down into the pose, and it's very easy to turn the toes out in order to go farther down, it's sometimes better to just get a little bit higher up, drop the heels, and then have the toes always facing forward. Because if you start opening the toes, you're already giving the body that imprint of the thighs rolling too far out. So whenever you try the binds, you're going to lose a lot of the stability and balance. It's harder, but there is a purpose for you practicing having the toes facing forward in this case. Now we're approaching the lizard pose. When you get into your lizard, ideally you want to have, like any other lunge, the kneecap stacking over the ankle of the front leg. I'm here maybe a little bit too far away, and I'm leaning into my quad. You can have the toes curled and pick up the back knee, making sure that you don't roll. I'm going to pause it right there. You don't roll into the outer edge of the foot of the front leg, because if you pick up the big toe of the foot that's in front, you are disengaging from the energy of the pelvic floor that will stabilize you whenever you start balancing on your foot on the super soldier. It's kind of like whenever you're standing on one foot, you start picking up the big toe. What happens? You're going to flip to a side. So the lizard, at least in this case, you want to have the big toe touching down, hip bone is rolling in for the thigh to slightly roll out, if that makes sense. This is one indication that gets a little bit tricky. It's more of like an abstract concept, but it will definitely help you every time that you break down your body in the smallest pieces to find triggering points. You'll be able to move more freely or find more space for physical growth as you understand how there's body parts that you can actually dissect a little bit more to get deeper into the postures. Then we're moving into splits. As you're coming into splits here, you can always start in the half split. I just moved straight into it. As I'm moving down, I'm stretching my quad back in order to lower my hips down. In this case, you want to have, oh yeah, by the way, adjust your pants. You want to have your left hip bone facing forward, because that will help you stretch a lot more through the quad rather than opening up the hips like a cheerleader stands, more likely. You want to have everything facing forward. And you can always pick yourself up. Here I'm accommodating myself. Honestly, I'm not, it looks like, but it definitely is an intense posture to be in. And you make sure that you repeat on the other side. You're going to see from here how it might look maybe a little bit less squared because my right quad is a little bit tighter. So I might not go as low, or I have my hands always planted down. Same thing. Now the right hip bone faces forward. When you disengage, use the core to slide your foot back. Find your downward facing. I'm moving into an option in your splits. If you feel really open on your quad, you can add the frog stretch on the back leg, which is bending the knee of the back leg, grabbing the foot, pressing it towards your glute, or potentially moving it out and then forward, again, like that shift gear motion. Same, you want to make sure that you keep the integrity of the hip bones, because if the hip lifts, then there's no need for the stretch. Just stay on the full split or half split. Then we're moving into the upper body. So the main movement that you will experience in this posture, at least from the chest to the arms, is a very deep internal rotation of the arms. And you can do this from a standing point, seated. These movements are really good. It's just a simple internal rotation of the arm. And it's called internal because anatomically the body is examined from the front with the palms open. So when you roll in the arm, you're rolling into the center of the body, which is an internal rotation. Make sure that you have a strong abdominal engagement, so you're not moving like a cat-cow, but it's just the arms moving in. Then moving into a simple hand bind behind, bend the knees, fold. Same thing, you can stay here, with the knees bent. If you start extending the knees in order to get a hamstring stretch while you're here, same principle as the other folds. Make sure that the hips are stacking over the ankles, and then you add weight from the fist. Now, I'm going to pause it right here and notice when I open up my palms, you lose a lot of the stretch the moment that you're binding and you let the hands go and you open them, because you disengage the triggering points of the hands that help you find a deeper opening from the chest line. And that's why it's harder to keep the palms touching together or pressing together. So you want to make sure that you honor that in order to get a little bit more of a stretch while you're there. Now, we already discussed the lizard, and there's a couple of things that you can add on here to already start prepping for the super soldier. Threading the arm, in this case underneath the front leg, and scooching. Notice how I'm using my thumb and my index to grab my ankle and really just shimming, scooching the shoulder behind, because the more you get it behind the knee, the better. Then start rolling the arm in, bending it and going for a half bind. You can stay here with the knee down or picking up the back knee already. And if you feel adventurous, you can take the opposite hand and go either for the fingers or wrist. If you get all the way there, keeping the integrity of the hip line as much as you can, the hip of the back leg facing forward, and then downward facing dog. Then from the front side, notice again, I'm going to demo again rolling the thigh out in lizard and how it's not really going to serve a purpose right here, because again, this is the foot that will be standing or pressing down into the ground when you enter the super soldier. So you want to roll it in, right? Because when you add the shoulder opener and the thigh starts rolling out, you're going to lose the balance. Then again, you can see from the front a little bit about picking up the back knee and having the hips a little bit more what we famously call squared, which is from the leg that is behind you, you bring the back hip forward to meet the one of the leg in front, which is tricky. But see, notice again, if you roll the toe or you open up the toe and roll the thigh out too far in lizard, then you lose a balance, and you always want to create kind of like, again, that stable front leg. So when you go in the half bind in your super soldier, you're stable. We're getting closer into the super soldier, so we're going to review a fold and a twist. I always recommend twisting to the right side first to aid digestion. When you press the left hand down and you bend the knees, you will have access to threading your right arm underneath, just like you did in your lizard. You roll the arm in order to really get the arm behind and trying to hook the leg that you're half binding. And then you can always take the other hand and add a full bind already, just to open up the chest a little bit more. And then straightening the legs is an extra hamstring stretch that will potentially give you a little bit of more stability when you enter the super soldier. In this case, you want to keep your feet hips distance, making sure that you repeat on the other side. You repeat on the other side. I'm going to demo here why. I'm going to pause it. You don't want to hip dip or bend the knee of the opposite side that you're not twisting towards. And I said it already, you're hip dipping if you do that. And you'll lose a little bit of balance as you're moving into the posture. So ultimately, if you feel tight on the hips, bend both knees. Or if you feel pretty open already, straighten both legs and stabilize one hip next to the other at the twist. So the twist is coming from the center of the belly to the heart to open up the collarbones. Then we move into half tortoise and full tortoise. I'm going to demo here kind of bending my knees and first threading my right arm underneath. It's the same principle as that little fold that we did before, but you're sitting on the ground and gravity and the ground are serving a higher purpose in this case. It will create a lot of resistance. So if you're adding the full bind, again, remember you're finding internal rotation to potentially find a fingers, or the wrist. And you repeat on the other side to make sure you're balanced, because this one is asymmetric. You can stand on either stage with the knees bent, or already half binding or full binding. Fold and try to square the chest down into the ground. It will be a little bit more stable when you create the posture itself. And then moving into the full tortoise pose, you don't want to go as wide on the legs because, again, ideally you want to have the legs closer up towards the ears, thighs closer up towards the ears. And it's tough when you don't have an assistant, of course, but you always want to make sure that you're spreading the heart down. It will feel as if you're pushing it in, but spread it out. Same, use the cord to thread the arms, roll them in, and then press towards the ground. I am not even close to binding my hands behind my back for full tortoise, but I still give it a good try. And again, same thing. Open up through the heart. Breathe to spread the abdomen to the sides. And then bend the knees, pull your arms from underneath. You can fold. Take a stretch. Moving into a more challenging posture here, which is your Firefly. It's a version of the Firefly where you're standing. The soles of the feet stay down. I'm trying my best to roll my toes in because they will want to go out, so roll them in. And then same, it's very similar to the tortoise, but you're standing. I bend my knees to kind of adjust myself, and then from there, I extend my legs to the best of my extent. Hopefully one day I will be able to grab a fingers, or wrist. But in the meantime, I just enjoy a really good stretch, spreading my heart in between my thighs, and then disengaging. Moving into the famous standing split. So this posture, sometimes because we really want to lift the legs super high, we tend to open up the thigh quite a bit. I will demo right here what it looks like to just let the thigh completely face the side, in this case of the same leg, see? And it won't really serve you as much, so you want to be mindful of letting the hip press down, thigh pull up, and then the leg goes higher. So also you can assist yourself with a fold. And then I'm adding a quad stretch here by bending the knee, grabbing my foot with the opposite hand. That's kind of like already prepping you for the real deal. Make sure that you repeat on the other side. All right, guys, so we're moving into the posture. And so we've broken down quite a bit already. I recommend you start in a lizard is the most stable way to begin. You can always start from standing split as well. Notice how I'm threading my arm. We already kind of broke this down. Stepping it forward in order to feel more stable, maybe to be able to thread my right arm underneath my right knee a little bit more, pausing it right here. Bending, in this case, the left knee so you can bring the left heel to the opposite glute, almost like a little scorpion tail. And then with the right arm, you grab the foot. Now that's the challenging part. It's a lot of quad stretch and hip groin stability because the hips should be in line with one another. As I keep moving, once you grasp the foot, you start lifting the knee up, not to the side, up. And this is where it becomes a little bit tricky. I'm going to pause it right here. You ideally want, in this case, the left hip to roll in, that is the hip bone to roll in, and the quad slightly out. But then at the same time, the knee points up, and so that is kind of like and it creates a lot of resistance. But again, the more you can isolate body parts, the more control you have over the posture. So as I keep moving forward, I use my left hand as the foot that I don't have down in order to keep pressing, threading the torso in between the groin, and then lifting the knee higher to then disengage the same way that you came into the posture. I'll repeat the posture on the other side, and when you step the opposite foot forward and you start wrapping the same side arm underneath the knee, really rotate the arm in. You can use the webbing of the index and thumb to help you when you grab the ankle. You step the back foot forward, scorpion the tail, and start lifting the kneecap up. I'm going to pause it for a moment. Then again, you want, in this case, the right hip bone facing forward at the same height as the left. So the thigh slightly will roll out, but the knee still points up. So you'll be looking more like a pillar instead of clock arms, if that makes sense. Because again, you're creating basically a half bind from the arm that is in front of the leg that is stepping on the ground. And the knee that is pointing up is shooting up in line with the hip bone of the leg that's not down. The hand that is touching the ground will function one more time as the leg that is not in the ground. So as that limb that will create balance and stability. You push down from the hand, from the index, thumb, and pinky to spread the center of the palm and find more length from the tricep in order to push the shoulder blades away from one another and the collarbones, and that will help you lock in. Well, that's it, guys. I really hope that you enjoyed this tutorial on how to do Super Soldier. It is a challenging posture itself because of all of the elements that it requires for you to find, again, stability from one foot and one hand touching the ground while lifting the other leg and binding with your other arm to grab that leg that's on the air. So just keep it going. I would say practice the postures that you saw here, adding on to them with the purpose of finding stability and ease through every repetition instead of just going through the motions when you practice the asanas. Don't forget to hit subscribe so you can always join me through my endeavors and every new thing that will be coming next. Again, I appreciate you jumping in today and watching this tutorial, and I hope your life and path is full of blessings.